Here. Thanks for joining us virtually. I see a couple of familiar names, so that's great. I am trying to share my screen here. And once I do, Lauren, it looks like host has, oh, never mind. I got it now. Once that's up, we can start the presentation. All right, are we seeing the screen there, Lauren? The presentation?
Yes, everything looks good.
Perfect. All right, let's get started. I'm Andy Churro. For those who don't know me, I'm the forester with Wisconsin DNR. I cover St. Croix County for private lands. And what does that mean? Well, I'm basically your point of contact if you have questions about your woods. I depending on the size of your woods, I can even come out there and take a look and give you some advice. So my contact information will be up at some point. Feel free to reach out. I'm a public resource. All right, so again, we're doing tree ID tonight. Learning objectives. Lauren sent out a tree ID key document, so we're going to learn how to use that. I'm also going to discuss what features of a tree are important for identification, and with that information, hopefully we can go over some examples at the end of the presentation and use that key and ID some trees. So in addition to the key, some other resources you might want, you go to the bookstore or the library, you see a bunch of guide books on, your local trees, that sort of thing. This one on the slide here is my favorite. This is what I use to learn my trees when I was just getting started in forestry. It's Michigan trees, but it covers all species in the upper Midwest. So has everything in Wisconsin. It has really good illustrations along with um, really good ID keys for both in the summer and winter. So, and just so you know, these slides will be available afterwards, so you can, refer back to this later. You don't have to write any of this down yet. Another, just wanted to mention, a piece of equipment you might want if you're, ready to go out and ID some trees is a picture on the left, the hand lens there. It's just a small little lens that you can use to look at some of the details of a tree, such as, how many needles is coming out of a bundle on a pine tree, and these different features of a twig are important to know. And don't go higher than 10 times magnification. A lot of them are 40x for, like, I think they're made for jewelers, but the 10x is definitely enough. All right, so the type of key we're using is a dichotomous key. So that means dichotomous, it means there's two. Dichotomous means divided into two parts. So starting each question is going to make you choose between two options. So in this example, needles in bundles or groups, or needles are single or flattened and scaly. So that's what you choose at first. So here's just a copy of the first page of that handout. Turn on my laser pointer. So starting under coniferous tree key here, say you decide, okay, first option, needles in bundles or groups, that it's going to tell you which number to go to next. So say you are choosing that first option, then you go to number 2. Say you choose the next option, needles are single, then you go to number 3 here. So pretty easy to use. All right, so the first thing you have to decide is whether it's, and this is the easiest, if it's a conifer or if it's deciduous. So, everyone should know what that means. Coniferous means evergreen mostly, and deciduous means it's losing its leaves in the fall, no leaves in the winter time. All right, so the most important thing with coniferous trees is really how many needles are growing out of each bundle, or if they're single, if they're flat, or if they're square. So really getting a close look at that twig and looking at how many needles are in a bundle. If it's 2 to 5, it's going to be a pine tree. If it's single, it's going to be a spruce or fir tree. It's really kind of that easy. So that's the first thing you want to look at. And these needles are growing out of a fascicle, it's called, but really, you can think of them as bundles. So that's what you want to look at for conifers, and your keys will give you some more options than that, but that's really the most important thing you want to look at. And then here's this feature right here about deciduous trees. So moving into deciduous ID, this trait and the next one I'm going to talk about are definitely the most important traits you want to know when looking at deciduous trees. So if I can teach you one thing from this course, it's this right here. So leaves, they can come out of the twig either in an opposite fashion. So looking at the figure here, the top example is opposite. So the leaves are coming opposite from each other on the twig. Otherwise, they can be alternate. So alternating left, right up the twig. So that's really important. And why is that important? Because for one thing, if it's opposite, that really narrows down your choices by a lot. It's, if you have a tree with opposite branching, it's a maple or an ash. It's and that's it. So that makes it a lot easier. And box elder, which is also technically a maple, and a couple shrubs that have opposite branching are dogwood and viburnum. So we're going to look at some examples of this. So these are all opposite branching, and the leaves are opposite. So I don't know if you can see on the screen here how well you're going to be able to see, but on the left picture, there's a maple tree, and you can see the leaves coming out opposite from each other. So you have to get up close in some cases. In other cases, look at this middle picture. Not only are the leaves arranged in this way, the branches are too. So if you see 2 branches coming out opposite from each other, most likely a maple or ash. Now you want to look at multiple examples when you're doing this. If you see just one twig that's if you see one example of opposite branching, you want to make sure you're seeing that all over the tree, because it can be deceptive. These aren't hard rules. So, and then on the right here is a really clear example of a ash with opposite branching. All right, so you can also, this is handy for IDing trees in the winter too. So here's the ash tree in winter. You can clearly see the opposite branching. So you see these raised, these buds are what you're seeing on the branch here, that are opposite from each other, and the branches will grow out of these buds. So that's opposite branching. And then obviously this one in the middle, you see the twigs clearly coming out across from each other. It kind of looks like a crow's foot. Ash especially has this like crow's foot pattern to it. All right, then alternate branching. This is what most trees are that you'll find out there. Any other tree is going to be alternating. So red oak, black cherry, aspen. Um, these are all examples of alternating leaf pattern. So here's another example. Can you tell if this is alternate or opposite? If you look at this bottom picture, it looks opposite to me. Those leaves are pretty clearly opposite. But then you go to this top picture here, well, I don't know, it kind of looks like it's alternating, doesn't it? So there can be some tricky ones, and especially in buckthorn's case. So that if you hadn't figured it out yet, this is a buckthorn twig. So buckthorn, it's a strange exception um, that has what we call subopposite branching, and this will actually help us with IDing it because it's really the only thing that has this sub-opposite branching, basically, where it's opposite, but sometimes not quite opposite. So, and it's the only one that does that. It really helps you identify it, any time of year, even in the winter. So we'll talk about that more later. All right, here's important thing number 2. So you have alternate and opposite, and then the other thing you want to look at for deciduous trees is simple versus compound. And this is talking about the type of leaf we're looking at. So a simple leaf is it's just one leaf connected to the twig. It's think a maple leaf, think a cherry leaf, just kind of your basic leaf. Compound leaf, this is where you have kind of this branching structure within the leaf itself. And we'll talk about kind of what defines that. We'll look at some examples later here, but basically you have multiple leaflets per leaf, and then rarely you have double compound. So this picture to the right, it's actually one leaf, believe it or not. This whole thing is one leaf. You got compound leaves coming out of another compound leaf. So, but you'll only see that on urban trees. So nothing you really need to know. I just wanted to mention it. All right, so examples of simple leaves. Again, this is a simple concept. So it's just your leaf connects straight to the twig, and it's all it's just one big leafy structure without any additional breaks in it or anything like that. All right, here's some examples of compound leaves. So the left two are pinnately compound, and the right is palmately compound. So the only compound trees you're going to see around here are pinnately compound, and pinnate comes from a Latin word meaning feathered. So if you think of a feather, like a single feather with the rib and then the I guess the feathery stuff coming out from both sides, that's kind of what pinnately compound is named after. So and again, it aids in our ID because if there's really only a few trees that have compound leaves, most trees are simple leaves. So if you identify a tree with compound leaves, again, it's narrowing down your choices. So just some definitions here. So we're on the same page. So what you're seeing here with all the words on it, again, this is one leaf, and it's made out of leaflets. The leaflets grow out of kind of a modified stem. It's called a petiole, but it's part of the leaf is the petiole. So you kind of have to wrap your head around that. This is one leaf, and it's made of leaflets. So how do we know this is a leaf made of leaflets and a compound leaf made of leaflets and not a twig made up of, you know, opposite branching simple leaves? Well, the answer is at the base of each leaf, where a leaf connects to the branch, to the stem, um, there's a bud. So the bud is where, branches, either a branch or a flower is going to grow out of. So that's kind of your answer for knowing, is this, a compound leaf I'm looking at, or is it a branch? Um, you're going to find a bud at the base of each leaf. And then, so if we look to the right here, this is a leaflet, or I'm sorry, this is an ash leaf with our friend emerald ash borer on here, but um, there's no buds at the base of the leaflets, right? So that's one way to kind of, make sure that this is a compound leaf that we're looking at. The other thing is, it's just by the feel of it, the petiole of a compound leaf is going to be a lot softer, um, a lot, easier to bend and break, whereas a branch is, it's going to feel like a branch. It's woody, um, it's stiff, right? So just some other terms that you might see in your ID keys, just that describe kind of the shape of the leaf, and the different features of the leaf. So really, all you need to know is that there's some terms out here. These terms are going to be defined in your Michigan trees, in your other reference material, and in this PowerPoint that you can print out. So feel free to print this out, come back to it. Looking at, it's going to describe the shape of the leaf and also the margin of the leaf. So the margin is basically the outline of the leaf, right? So it's either going to be smooth, serrate, or doubly serrate. And just quickly, another thing, this is an elm leaf right here, and see how it's uneven at the base. That's a dead giveaway that it's an elm leaf, is this unevenness at the base. So you'll learn all these, tricks the more you do it. So, and then here's some more definitions that you can refer back to. So it's all stuff you're gonna want to observe when you're and the keys are going to ask you to observe when you're out there IDing trees. So again, smooth outline, also smooth margin. So outline or margin, you're going to use those interchangeably. And then, this says toothed. I think more often you're going to see serrated. And then just another feature that you can look at with the twig is the pith. So the pith is, if you cut a stem, with a knife and kind of look at the inside, that's the pith. So the pith has different shapes to it. To be honest with you, I don't really use this that much. It's just another tool you can use. What I do use it for, though, is when I'm looking for honeysuckle. So honeysuckle has an empty pith, so, or a hollow pith. So honeysuckle, that's one of our invasives. So if we're not sure that, if we need to pull this out of the ground or do something with this plant, if you're not sure if it's a honeysuckle, make a cut like that, and if it's hollow, it's pretty sure it's a honeysuckle there. So that's really the only time I use it. Also, here's a black walnut branch that's kind of sheared lengthwise, and this has what's called the chambered pith, so you can use that too for black walnut. That's kind of interesting to look at least. All right, so you're going to be tempted to look at the bark for identifying trees. It's the thing that's easiest to look at. It's right in front of you. It's easiest to get at. But honestly, it's one of the last things. I want you looking at when you're IDing a tree, it's going to throw you off. It still throws me off. 5 years into this job looking at bark. So it's really one of the last clues you want to use. So these two pictures here are different plants or different trees. The left is a black cherry and the right is a buckthorn. So um, I mean, I might get those confused if I don't have a twig to look at, if I don't have a leaf to look at. So it's really tricky. So just wanted to mention that. So again, the top is buckthorn, the bottom is black cherry. Really hard to tell apart. It's the bark, it's variable. It looks like other things. So that's a good example is cherry and buckthorn, because cherry is good, right? That's a native tree here, feeds wildlife. Buckthorn, you all know how terrible that is. So, so say you're walking up to those two, and you grab a twig here instead. Well, you're a lot better information to look at from the twig here. We got the characteristic. If you identified it already, that's great. The sub-opposite branching, right? Characteristic, even during the winter. So first thing I'm looking at when I'm grabbing a twig is what is the branching pattern here? Are we opposite, or are we alternate, or are we buckthorn where you don't want to be either? You also have this thorn at the end, so that's a modified part of the branch there. So only buckthorn has that. So again, you're getting a lot more information when you're looking at the twig here. You're looking at these buds too, the details of the buds. These, they look blackish brown with multiple bud scales. Excuse me. All right, so grab a branch of the other tree. Looks totally different, right? It's distinctly alternating for sure. And you have these beautiful cherry red buds with, they're larger, they have color to them. You have a terminal bud here instead of a thorn. So that's black cherry. All right. Sorry, I was looking at the time. So another couple things I just wanted to mention, some big picture differences. So the trees you find are gonna vary based on where you are in the state too. And one of the reasons is that Wisconsin, it actually has two distinctive like climate regions you can think of. So the northern hardwoods and I guess this southern prairie zone are each going to have their own kind of different set of trees and animals that make habitat there. This has been studied for a long time now, these climate differences within the state. So what I'm getting at here is, here's an example of, so each red dot on the map in the middle here is where balsam fir has been documented to grow naturally, right? I mean, look at how well that lines up with the this northern region that has significantly colder winter, a little bit longer winter. That's the difference for balsam fir. That's why it grows up here and not in the southern region. And here's another map with shagbark hickory. So you can see that only due to the little bit longer summer, a little bit shorter winter, shagbark hickory, it's going to grow down southern Wisconsin. And then tension zone is what we refer to the middle part there. It's a tension zone. You're going to have everything there. So at least when it comes to climate differences. And then another big picture difference is the soil, is what kind of soil are you standing on. So if you have really sandy soil, you're really only going to have some kind of scrubbier oak species. So black oak, pin oak, those are both, I'd call them like scrubbier oak just in terms of like appearance and growth. They don't grow nice and tall, like a nice and straight, I should say, like a white oak or a northern red oak. And pine. Though that's pretty much the only thing. If you have like pure sand or um a significant amount of sand, like up here in Somerset, um so those of us in St. Croix County, you can you can see this map here, and so around Somerset you have a lot of sand, so that's this tan color. If you have rich soils, you're gonna have a lot more variety of species. I mean, you're gonna have the same thing you might find in a sandy soil, but you're just gonna have a lot more because a lot more stuff wants to grow there, right? And basically, a lot of St. Croix County has heavy soils outside of, Hudson, Somerset. We have a lot of heavy soils, a lot of rich soils, and wet soils too. So if your soil's wet, if you're, in a near, a watershed where you have a lot of seasonal flooding, you're going to have, an ash swamp possibly, where it's just ash and silver maple growing. So just wanted to let you know that, there, depending on climate, soil, you're going to have a certain like subset of trees to identify. And once, in your county, you're probably only going to have like 20 some different tree species. So, don't be intimidated when you get this book and there's like 100 different ones in here. Once you go out there and figure it out, there's really not that many. Okay. So time to use your key. So if you have it with you, please pull it out at this time, the printout, or look at it on your computer. Lauren, do we have any questions or anything? Are we good on time?
No questions yet, and you're doing great on time.
All right. Well, sounds good. All right. I actually need to get my key pulled up here so I can follow along. All right. First one. So, obviously this is a conifer, right? We got needles. We got pine cones. Looks like a conifer to us, so we're going to use our conifer key on the first page. All right, hopefully you're following along. I'm just going to assume you're following along, but so the first choice is, are needles in bundles or groups? Or I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Are needles in bundles, or are they single or flattened and scaly? So, this is probably what you're going to walk up on in this top left picture. You grab it, maybe you pull some needles off, you find this at the bottom, this bottom picture. Looks like a group of needles to me, right? So I'm counting 5 needles. But anyway, the first thing to decide is it's definitely a bundle, right? So that brings us to option number 2 here. So we go down to 2. Are needles in clusters of more than 5 needles? If it is, it's a tamarack. Well, we have 5, but we don't have more than 5. So what's the next option? Needles 2 to 5 per bundle, pine species. Well, we definitely got 5. So this is a pine. And then basically once you got those 2 choices, all you have to do is Is it 5 needles per bundle, or is it needles in pairs? And obviously we got five, so this is a white pine. So it's easy as that.
Hey Andy, we got a question in the chat.
Go ahead.
Any suggestions about identifying trees by when their leaves drop?
By when their
Or
leaves drop, like the
yes.
timing. Um, there are some like general trends you might see. So ash, I find turn yellow first. So those are kind of the first ones to go. If you're in the city, honey locust, another pinnately compound tree. So you might see those pinnately compound trees go first. Um, so and then color is really a good thing as well. When trees are turning color, you're not going to find that in a key or anything, but once you're out in the woods looking at different colored trees in the fall, you'll start to pick up on some of this. So obviously the maples have a gorgeous, red orange color, but ash are going to be bright yellow, aspen are going to be, a gorgeous golden yellow color. But yeah, timing, I'd say real, ash is kind of the first one that comes to mind. Oak is one of the last. So, um, and oak always holds its leaves into the early winter too. So if you see, trees with, um, just brown leaves all over it where everything else is already dropped, that's probably an oak tree. And then timing is also going to be actually really important for buckthorn too. So we're going to talk about that on Thursday, identifying buckthorn. But just real quick, buckthorn, it stays green into November. It's crazy. So it'll be the only green thing in the woods for quite some time in the fall. So that makes it really easy to identify.
We have one more question that just came in.
Yeah,
How
shoot.
how do wild fruit trees compare?
Wild fruit trees. Um, so I mean, there's black cherry, I guess. Um, otherwise, I mean, what types of fruit trees are we talking here? I guess I need a follow up
Yeah,
question.
it says plum, and if you want to go ahead and unmute to ask your to follow up on your question, go ahead.
Plum. Okay. So plum, identifying plum, that's a cherry species, okay? So it's a species of cherry, but it's going to be a smaller tree, right? So um and you're going to have some fruits on there, well into the fall, kind of like it's a good source of winter food for birds and other animals. So plum, yeah, it's you can consider it a cherry. You'll see it in your tree book as kind of wild, either wild plum or wild cherry. I forget how they define it, but you can look up all its different features in here. All right. Okay, so we're gonna go over one more conifer together. Go over this real quick. Are needles in bundles or groups, or are they single? Oh, there's sure a whole bunch of them coming out. So definitely a group there. So going down to number 2, are they in clusters of more than 5? Yeah, I'd say so. That's our tamarack. Oh, it was on the screen the whole time. Oh, shoot, but that was an easy one anyway. So tamarack, it's also it's the only deciduous conifers, so it loses its needles in the fall. So the only conifer that does that natively here is the tamarack. So if you see this, in the fall. Good chance it's a tamarack. Some people might confuse this with like a disease tree. It's completely normal and it's beautiful. It's one of my favorite trees. All right. So now we're gonna do a little quiz here for you. Gonna go over this one on your own. So, using your tree ID key, we're gonna have a little pop-up here and gonna give you some options. Now, you might be tempted to just click one right away, but please give the key a shot and see what you come up with. So go through the options, and we'll discuss it once we get some answers here. So I'll give you about a minute to do that.
Andy, do you see the question on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, good, thanks.
So again, alternate or opposite, simpler compound. We getting some answers coming in, Lauren?
Yes, sorry, I thought you could see that. So
Oh, I do not. I just see the question, I guess. Let me try to answer it, see if that changes anything.
okay.
No, I don't see anything.
Okay, yeah, let's give just another 30 seconds or so,
Yeah.
and then once I click end, you should be able to see it.
All right.
All right, let me share. Can you see the results?
I do.
All right.
All right, good job, everyone. So, yeah, and silver and red maple, so the answer is red maple. Okay. But most of you answered silver or red, and that's, given this key here, that's what I would have answered too, because it brings you to this box with the three maples, right? Our leaf margin entire. So that's one thing I don't think I mentioned yet. Leaf margin entire. What does entire mean? That means smooth. So smooth or not not toothed or serrated. Okay. 5 lobes. I can see how you think, some of these bottom lobes. It's hard to say whether that's a lobe or not, right? And some of these keys are not going to be the easiest thing. You're going to have to go with, what do you see the most out of the leaves here? But anyway, so leaf margin double toothed or leaf margin single toothed. So yeah, given this picture, it's really hard to tell if it's single tooth or doubly serrated. Um, so I'm sympathetic to everyone. Whatever you voted for, silver maple especially, it's hard to tell if there's two teeth or not. And what's a deep angular opening? Like, you have nothing to compare a deep angular opening to. So this key, it's good to get you started, but really you're gonna have some better options to choose from, more details from like Michigan trees or some other guides. But this one keeps it nice and easy, and it'll get you started, get you used to using these keys. So good job on that. All right. This one I think I'm gonna go over with all of you. So let's go through the broadleaf key. So alternating or opposite. Well, let's look here. This looks opposite to me. You've got these I'm already gonna say it, the compound leaves coming out opposite from each other, right? Okay, so where does opposite branching take us? Number 2, compound or simple leaves. Opposite with compound leaves. Okay, it's compound, so that brings us to 3. All right, so now we're going to 3. How many leaflets? Do we have 3, sometimes 5 leaflets? If we do, that's a box elder. But I'm seeing 7 on this one. So 5 to 11 leaflets, so ash. So we know it's an ash here. All right, so now we're in the box, the ash box. 7 to 13 leaves. I'm just kind of looking at the first part of each answer here. 7 to 13 leaflets, 5 to 9 leaflets, or 7 to 9 leaflets. Well, this example, it fits all 3 of those, so let's go to the next thing. Leaflets do not have petiole. So I mentioned, this middle structure here is called the petiole. Well, the leaflets actually have a petiole as well. Um, so just keep that in mind. So leaflets do not have a petiole. Kind of hard to tell based on the picture. Where my laser pointer is, that kind of looks like a petiole to me, but let's see what the other options have. Leaflets have petiole, smile-shaped leaf scar extending up sides of new bud. All right, so say you're given this information or this option, and all right, well, what's the leaf scar? So it's where you break off a leaf at the base, and it's the scar that it leaves behind. That's your leaf scar. So what do we have? So it's asking if it's smile shaped. Maybe like a open mouthed smile, but I don't think that's what it's referring to. I think it's more of, they're going for more of like a crescent shape leaf scars, what they mean by smile. So going up the sides of a new bud. No, I don't think it's going up the sides, so I don't think it's white ash. All right, leaf scar ends at base of new bud. Yeah, I would say it does. I would say it definitely does. So kind of between black ash and green ash. Given that, our leaf scar is pretty much matching green ash, I'm gonna go with that. And indeed it is green ash. So again, you're gonna have to, some things are not always gonna be like crystal clear, right? With the petioles, it's like, I don't know for sure. Let's look at what other options we have. And then here's an example of ash if you look at the PowerPoint again. So at the top, that's white ash. Clearly these leaflets have petioles, right? Very clearly. And then clearly black ash does not have petioles. So green ash, I don't know. I'm surprised it says leaflets have petiole, because those are pretty small petioles to me. But the biggest thing for identifying ash species, it really is this leaf scar. So now you can see that smile-shaped leaf scar. Definitely looks like a smile on the white ash. Black ash is kind of shield-shaped. And really, ash, they're all functionally kind of the same in forest management. So, if you have me to your property, I'm probably not going to tell you whether it's a white ash or a green ash. I'm probably just going to call it an ash, to be totally frank with you. So the important thing to know is that it's an ash if you have compound, opposite branching compound leaves. It's an ash. All right, let's do another quiz here. If y'all turn or go back to your broadleaf key and kind of work your way through the options, give you a couple minutes. Try to not look at the poll until you think you have it, because otherwise it'll, you'll have the three options there, which that's cheating. So give you a couple minutes on that. If you have a question, if you can't tell, if it's opposite or something, or alternate, for example, something like that. If you have a question about that, just feel free to type it or unmute, and we can talk about it. Let's see, what do we got? I'm gonna give you one hint here. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where that is. Okay, the hint is that the leaf petioles are flat.
Had about 4 people answer. If we want to give another 30 seconds, see if any other answers come in.
Yep, yeah, and they're gonna have to work through a few more options this time, so.
All right, here are the results.
There we go. Okay. All right, so most of you answered trembling aspen. That's good. That is the right answer. So just in the for time here, I'm not going to go through in detail, but answers aspen. So good job. You might get confused with birch because it is white. It does have a white bark, but paper birch, it is going to be a lot paperier than the aspen. So here's similar. These are all popples. I'm sure a lot of you refer to them as, but these are actually 3 different species. Okay, we're gonna do this together now. So I'm gonna go a little faster this time. Opposite or alternate? This right picture, clearly alternating. Oh, I just spoiled the answer already, didn't I? That's okay, we'll go through it anyway. So alternating, go to 4. Compound or simple, it's simple. Go to 8, leaves lobed. So lobed, it's gonna look, like a maple or an oak. That's not what's going on here. So we go to 9. Is the bark papery? Not really. That's more of like I call this with black cherry, I call it burnt potato chip bark. It's not papery. So if you're not sure, look at, if it is papery, it's a birch. Well, I think we know that's not a birch. So anyway, bark not papery, go to 10. Are the leaf petioles flat? You're only gonna know by feeling it, really. And on a cherry, they're not flat. Sorry. So going down to 12, are leaves nearly as wide as long, or are they longer than wide? So this leaf it's longer than it is wide, right? So 14, is the leaf less than 3 times as long as it is wide, or is it more than that? If it's more than that, it's a willow. So if we think of a willow leaf, that's kind of like really, it's called the lanceolate blade. So really skinny. We know it's not a willow. It's so we go to 15. Are the leaf veins thin and branch often? Um, or are they thick and run from center to edge without branching? Well, if you look at that right picture, um, might be hard to see, but they are branching quite a bit. So the venation on this leaf. 16 fine blunt teeth or sharp pointed teeth. I don't know. What else do we got? Leaves 2 to 6 inches long with dark bark, or yeah, I would say that's what we got here. So we just worked through the key for black cherry there, and that's a good example that gets you down through all the kind of different choices you have to make for, identifying trees using this key. And then just real quick, another kind of like trick for cherry is that every cherry species, even your wild plum there, so anything in the prunus species, um, is going to have these glands at the base of the leaf. They're not going to be as pronounced as this example, but that's just a way to, if you see these glands, and again using your little hand lens, look at the base of the leaf. If you think this might be a cherry or a plum or something in that species, look at that. See if you can find these glands. Um, all right. Well, I have one more example here, but I don't know, Lauren. I think we should. What do you think with time here?
How many slides do we have after this example?
Um,
Just a couple more.
we got 2 more quizzes and 1 more example. So
Um, why don't we skip over the last couple quiz and they can take a look at it when I send the PDF of this. Just go through
yeah,
the last couple slides, and that way we have a couple minutes for questions.
cool. Okay, just want to mention, I guess our last example here. Um, so this is, oak is pretty easy to identify just based on leaf shape. If you have the leaves out, that's great. It has that characteristic lobed pattern. And just want to mention real quick with oak, it's a red oak if it's, I don't think this is in the I don't think this is in the slide either. It might be in your guide. Yeah, well, yeah, it'll be in the key, but just want to mention, easy way to identify oak based on leaf is if the tips of the oak are pointed, it's a red oak. If they're round, it's a white oak. Um, and that means, so red oak, there's a couple different species within the red oak group. But functionally and in terms of timber quality, they're pretty similar to red oak. So within red oak, there's black oak, pin oak, northern red oak. Okay. So with the pointed leaves, again, red oak, and rounded, it's the white oak, which includes bur oak, white oak, and swamp white oak. And then here's final example here to pay attention to. The leaves based on where they are on the tree itself. So these leaves came from the same exact tree. On the left, these trees were at the bottom of the tree because they're what's called a shade leaf. So they're not at the top, so they're not getting as much sunlight. So it's incredible. The tree knows to grow their leaves wider, so it has more surface area to get whatever sunlight is getting through. And then at the top of the leaf, you'll have kind of more deeply lobed shape here. So, leaf shape, it can vary on the tree itself too. So just something to keep in mind. Here's those other species I mentioned. So what to do, after this? What can you do? Identify, so it's winter obviously, right? So see if you can identify some conifers on your property using that conifer key. Again, the most important thing is to grab a branch and to see how many needles are coming out of there. Um, so I guess another thing would be to review these slides later. Get yourself Michigan trees, get yourself some other field guides if you prefer those later this winter, so that you're ready to ID some trees this summer. And I think there's a winter key as well included in the email, so you can give that a shot. And another thing you can try, flag trees you're not sure on right now. You can come back to the summer and so flag them and come back when you can actually see the leaves. All right, that's it for tonight, but definitely time for some questions.
Yeah, and at this time, please, if you have a question, feel free to unmute and ask. You can use the chat, but at this time you don't have to if you want to go ahead and speak up.
Do young birch trees, are they identified the exact same as an adult before they have their white bark?
Yeah, great question. No, young birch trees are gonna look a little different. So yeah, it's tricky. So you're not gonna have that distinctive papery bark, right? You're gonna have to look at the buds, and you're not gonna get that in this broadleaf key. You're gonna have to look at the buds and the leaf. So this guide, again, it kind of hinges on using the bark, which again I don't like. So there are other features you're gonna have to look for on a young birch. That's a great question.
Andy,
Thank you.
there's a
Chat.
question in the chat. Yeah, difference between black cherry and choke cherry.
Sure. Black cherry, it's so black cherry is kind of it's an upright tree that grows quite tall, whereas a choke cherry is either a shrub or a small tree that won't really reach up as high as a black cherry. So um, so that's, I guess, one way to kind of distinguish them. If you have more of like a shrubby looking thing, it's probably a choke cherry. There's some details on the leaf that you can look up in in your reference material that'll kind of point you to one or the other. But they are two different species and with two different traits. So let me see if there's any other questions, go ahead and ask. I'm actually going to look it up in my book here to see if it mentions it as a difference.
So I know that you mentioned that you're not so interested in or not into identifying by bark, but I'm thinking of the winter and not having too many leaves to use to identify. So are there any tips that you would recommend to identify winter trees in by bark? Like for instance, the white oak and the red oak, isn't the white oak, the bark is kind of sometimes mottled and not streamlined,
Yeah.
for
Yep.
instance.
Yep.
And do you have hackberry up there?
Yep. We do.
So hackberry has a pretty distinct bark too. Are there any other tips that would have distinct bark that you would recommend to like
Yeah.
use to identify?
Yeah, I feel like hackberry is kind of the hallmark of distinctive bark. For those who aren't sure what hackberry, it has these kind of nodules that come out of the bark. So that is very distinctive. No other trees have that. So yeah, that's a great point. And then with the oaks, yeah, that is one thing you can look at for sure in the winter. I'd say it's still best to look at the branches and buds if you can, but obviously on some of those trees you're not going to be able to reach that, right? So so if the bark is all you have to look at, yeah, the white oak, it is going to be in general a lighter color. And one thing with white oak is it's subject to what is it called? It's
Oak wilt?
bark patch disease or something like that. So it's a fungal disease that where the outside of the bark will kind of slough off of the white oak. And if you're seeing that, where with this like patchy looking bark, where on the bottom part of the tree it looks like smooth, and then suddenly it's like more corky and thick. Yeah, that's probably that patch disease. So yeah, that's a good point. Red oak, it kind of looks like I don't know. I guess I think of like cross country ski tracks. They're like parallel, flat plates that run up and down the bark. And then yeah, it's gonna be that's on mature oak trees. Gonna be totally different on younger trees. So those are some tips for bark. Trying to think of other ones. Obviously, white birch, that papery bark on a mature white birch is a dead giveaway. Yeah, and I will mention. I mean, I've gotten asked. I get. So the thing is, I just mentioned that red oak has those like long plates. Aspen does too. So careful of that. The number of times I've actually confused aspen and oak when they're like two totally different species. But make sure to look like up the tree too, because aspen will eventually turn white at the top. So just a tip there for aspen. I'm looking through the species here, trying to think of other. Ironwood, it has kind of like a cat scratch bark. Looks like a cat scratch pole. You'll see that in the slides there, or actually, I think in the slides it say young ironwood, so it doesn't have that. All right, that's all I got for that question. Anyone else? Stop sharing. Hello, everyone.
All right. Thanks for joining. Look in your email to. Oh, was somebody going to ask a question?
I was just gonna say thank you so much for this.
Oh, you're
No
welcome.
problem.
Thanks. Yeah, big thank you to Andy for doing this presentation, and he will be back on Thursday to talk a little bit more about some of those invasive plants that he mentioned in his slideshow. But check your email tomorrow. You'll see a link to the recording, PDF of these slides, and a couple more pieces of information. For Thursday, use the same Zoom link to join us. And if you have any questions before then, feel free to reach out to me through email. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.